As a Great Lakes advocate, Greg works towards the goal of improving community access to the waters of the Great Lakes. He sits as the executive director for the Niagara Coastal Community Collaborative, providing leadership to their community science initiatives, water quality investigations, nature-based shoreline restoration, and rights holder collaboration. So Greg, we're really interested to learn more about this group and the wonderful things they're doing. Welcome, and I'll turn it over to you now.
Great, thanks, Linda. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm just going to try and share my screen and see if we can do this. All right, it looks like we can. Can we just get somebody to confirm that it is up on the screen, because I can't tell.
Yep, we're good, Greg. Looks good.
All right, awesome. Thank you, and good evening, everyone, and happy Valentine's Day. I am very thrilled to be here to talk to you about our community science initiatives at Niagara Coastal. But first, I'd love to introduce myself. And given the fact that it's Valentine's Day, I thought I could do this speed dating style. So real quick, my name is Greg Ford. I'm the executive director of the Niagara Coastal Community Collaborative. I love everything about the Great Lakes, and I take long walks on the beach for work. So without further ado, I'll just get right into it. First, I would like to acknowledge that the land that I'm coming to you from remotely, and the land upon which Niagara Coastal practices its initiatives, is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Mississauga, and Anishinaabe people, many of whom continue to live and work here today. Let us acknowledge that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources of this land, and let us work towards reconciliation and new relationships by learning from treaties such as the Dish with One Spoon and the Two-Row Wampum, to better both our understanding and relationships with each other and to this land. All right, so before we get into how we use community and citizen science to address data gaps on the Lake Erie shoreline, I'd love to first introduce you to what the Niagara Coastal Community Collaborative is. It's also known as Niagara Coastal. So the Niagara Coastal Community Collaborative is a collective approach to environmental governance that brings together ENGOs, educational institutes, citizen groups, and municipal, provincial, and federal governments with a common agenda of optimizing and expanding local capacity and action to build a healthy and resilient Lake Erie coastal ecosystem. We recognize that a healthy Lake Erie coastal ecosystem supports the community's economic, recreational, spiritual, and environmental needs. So put plainly, we're a group of groups, and we're guided by the principles of the collective impact model. So through the development of shared performance indicators, progress tracking, and data sharing, the collaborative is focused on improving the collective understanding of the health of Lake Erie shores and the stressors that are acting to reduce its resilience. Holistically, the health of the Lake Erie coast depends on good water quality, beaches free from nuisance algae, and shorelines in a natural state that provide habitat for locally significant species. So incorporating the local community through citizen science monitoring programs and active engagement opportunities to improve their understanding of the health of the Lake Erie coast drives both partnerships, behavioral change, and it leads to long-term environmental benefits and improvements. People learn best by doing, and when they feel their actions have a positive impact, their mindsets and their behaviors synchronously improve. Today, we operate 4 major initiatives, all of which are powered by the community of driven volunteers and citizen scientists that we have access to here in Niagara. First, we started the collaborative in 2017 by providing a collective forum for knowledge brokering under the collective impact model. Fast forwarding into 2019, we started what was known as the Lake Erie Niagara Water Monitoring Hub, which is a community-based water monitoring initiative to collect recreational beach water quality and share that information with the public. And in 2021, we launched 2 new initiatives in the Visual Assessment Survey Tool, or VAST, to monitor shoreline changes, and our Nature-Based Shoreline Solution initiative to address some of the shoreline changes that we've observed during our monitoring. So as I've mentioned a few times, we operate under what is known as the collective impact model, but we use a management cycle that we've developed called the Collaborative Stewardship Action Framework. The cycle was developed to identify and address data gaps on Lake Erie and allow the community of practice to more efficiently work together. All of our initiatives are designed to fit into this cycle, starting with knowledge brokering, leading to community-based monitoring, using that to inform local actions, and then the results of all of which go back into our ongoing brokering of knowledge in Niagara and elsewhere throughout the Great Lakes. I'll take us through this cycle in the next few slides and demonstrate just how our initiatives fit within it. So the first step in the cycle is knowledge brokering. So this work provides a vital role in sharing and distributing coastal knowledge from all participants who are working together under collective impact to improve the Lake Erie shoreline. And the collective impact is a governance model that was developed by the Tamarack Institute. There are 5 central conditions of a collective impact model. These are having a common agenda, a shared measurement system, mutually reinforcing activities, continuous communication between participants, and an organization that provides backbone support. A common agenda is defined as a common understanding of a problem, like the issues that are affecting the Great Lakes, and a shared vision for change, like a collective goal of increasing shoreline resiliency. A shared measurement system is defined by collecting data and measuring results in the same way. This way, everyone working together is sharing accountability in working towards our common agenda. Continuous communication is pretty evident and pretty self-evident, but it is a system that ensures that all collaborative members are talking to each other about what it is we're doing, so there's no duplication of efforts, and so that all of our efforts are aligned. And finally, backbone support. Niagara Coastal is a collective group of many other groups, but we do also operate as a separate organization and entity that provides the backbone support to all of our member organizations. And so all of these conditions go together to form the collective impact model and keep us working together towards our shared goals. And in our case, we're working together to preserve a resilient Great Lakes shoreline in Niagara. So the Niagara Coastal Community Collaborative began actually as a series of workshops and roundtable discussions that were hosted by Environment and Climate Change Canada in 2017. These came about as a result of the cumulative assessment of the nearshore that was being conducted by Environment Canada during that time. And since then, they've released the cumulative assessment for Lake Erie and Lake Ontario with the other lakes on the docket. But during these discussions, many ENGO, community, and academic groups gathered in a collective forum to discuss the issues facing the Lake Erie shoreline and set down the priorities that would eventually guide the collaborative in how it operated. These priorities still exist today and they guide our activities, and they're as follows. The first is nature-based shorelines. So this includes the optimization of the preservation and restoration of natural shoreline areas. Our second priority is healthy beaches, which includes the identification of local sources of pollution that impact the shoreline, things like phosphorus, loading, E. coli, algae blooms, and actions that we can undertake to address them. The third is habitat and species, and this mostly revolves around defining and determining locally significant ecosystems, mitigating the impact that local threats are having on the systems and the species. And for each of these ecological priorities during those workshops, the following were identified. We identified what the scientific questions are, if there's a plan to address them, any kind of reporting products we might need, communication and engagement tools, resources that we have available to us and that we may need available to us in the future, as well as shared indicators of success. All of this went into forming what we called our roadmap. And so as you can see here, we began and then we came up with a common agenda and that shared measurement system. And once we had identified our ecological priorities, we asked those questions. What are the science questions? Is there a data gap? Do we have a plan to address this, etc.? And so for the example that you can see here in this slide of the roadmap, we had wanted to determine the locations of high beach postings. We'd also wanted to identify not just where postings occurred, but where sources of E. coli came from that led to the postings. And so these questions, derived from those collaborative forums, informed what our next step in our collaborative stewardship action cycle would be, which is the monitoring. However, beyond just providing and acting as a local forum for collaborative discussions, we also fulfill a knowledge brokering and knowledge sharing role throughout the region for Great Lakes specific issues. And so as such, with all of our initiatives, we build in education, outreach, awareness campaigns, We host webinars and workshops, we provide in-field training, and we work with media partners around the community to let everyone know just how the Great Lakes are being affected and the things that we can do locally to address those impacts. And so this part 2 informs the second step in our collaborative stewardship action cycle, the monitoring. So our community-based monitoring initiatives are designed and were designed to address some of the science questions that were developed for the ecological priorities. For example, we recently wanted to address various gaps regarding pollution sources impacting the Lake Erie shoreline. And so we launched our community-based water monitoring program and our visual assessment survey tool, or the VAST program. So first up is our community-based water monitoring. This was started in 2019 when we were approached to partner with Swim Drink Fish Canada, which is another national charity devoted to building a movement of people working to ensure a swimmable, drinkable future for all of our fresh and marine waters. And so together with Niagara College, we worked to establish the Lake Erie Niagara Water Monitoring Hub. This hub engages community and citizen scientists in working with our staff to collect water quality samples at unmonitored shorelines across Niagara. And so this work helps to fill gaps with public health information surrounding recreational water quality. And so we help to monitor beaches that are not currently monitored by the region. We do look for E. coli bacteria as it's an indicator bacteria for recreational water quality. Typically, it's an indicator that there could be another pathogenic organism in the water that can cause gastrointestinal illness in humans. We know that approximately 400,000 people a year in Canada get sick from interacting with contaminated recreational water. And so this is a vital service that we are very happy that we can offer to the community. But I talk about a hub, but what is a hub? A hub is actually a lab space, and it's sort of a framework for how we act. It's designed to empower people to monitor and protect their local water bodies. And so through the hubs, people are often given the opportunity to learn about and become more connected to the water in their community. And as with all of our initiatives, it's driven by citizen science, meaning that the concerned members of the community themselves are directly able to contribute to local water issues and get answers to their complicated questions like, where can I swim and is the water clean? And so each hub actually follows the swim, drink, fish model, including the Lake Erie Niagara hub. So each hub actually conducts weekly recreational water sampling and field observations, fills out environmental health and safety surveys to get a better understanding of each stretch of shoreline. They then share all of their data openly through the Swim Guide and Swim, Drink, Fish open data portal. And each hub teaches people about their local waters so that they can become what we call water literate. To be water literate means that you know how you impact the water and how the water impacts your community. Importantly, though, we do share this data, and that helps to address one of those crucial data gaps about where these beach postings occur. So we do use the Swim Guide, which is a free website and app that is developed by Swim Drink Fish. It shares water quality results for over 8,000 beaches across 11 different countries. And so once our lab and our citizen scientists have collected and analyzed our samples, we then share those publicly on the Swim Guide so that anyone can have access to them. Okay, next up, I'm going to share a video, and I really hope the audio comes across. This was a video that was put together by Swim Drink Fish, highlighting the Lake Erie Niagara hub specifically. And so we'll give it a shot, and please just interrupt me if there is no audio. My name is Gregory Ford. I'm the Great Lakes Water Monitoring Manager of Science and Operations with Swim Drink Fish, and I'm the Executive Director of Niagara Coastal.
My name is David Meeker, and I am the Lake Erie Niagara Community Monitoring Hub Coordinator.
My name is Tessa Anderson. I am the Lake Erie Niagara Community Monitoring Hub Coordinator. I've lived on the Great Lakes most of my life. Yeah, I care about protecting them.
So this project, the Great Lakes Monitoring Hubs, was thanks to funding from Environment and Climate Change Canada's Great Lakes Protection Initiative. And in 2018, Swim Drink Fish was approached to set up monitoring hubs with Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities across the Great Lakes. In April 2019, Swim Drink Fish approached the Niagara Coastal Community Collaborative with an opportunity to start a monitoring hub on the north shore of Lake Erie to monitor for things like recreational water quality, climate change, and the impacts that shoreline erosion and algae wash-up and harmful algae blooms are having on our recreation of our Great Lakes as a resource. The purpose of this project is to engage coastal citizens and coastal communities on the Great Lakes in collecting this important recreational water quality information so that we can get it into the hands of users so that they know when and where to safely interact with the waters of our Great Lakes.
The hub does very important work. While public beaches are monitored by the Public Health Unit, we go to the additional areas where people enjoy swimming and the Public Health Unit doesn't monitor. So we actually provide supplemental information to what they're providing, and it's all free and publicly accessible on Swim Guide.
My favorite thing about monitoring the Niagara Hub is obviously getting outside, walking on the beach. On a hot sunny day like this, you can't really beat taking water samples and having that be your day job.
I really appreciate that, staff are putting their time in to go in and check the results from public health units and then make that broadly available to all Swim Guide users. It's one convenient place for you to go find the information about anywhere you would like to go swimming.
You can swim in Lake Erie. Lake Erie is actually clean and has really great water quality, especially if you live in the region and you're torn between Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. A lot of people have this connotation that Lake Erie is really dirty and destroyed, but since the 70s it's kind of reclaimed itself and we're back on track having swimmable waters.
Eventually, our goal is to release a toolkit so that any community on the Great Lakes can take the lessons that we've learned over the last 4 years and create a monitoring hub of their own so that they can do this for their communities. Alrighty, I hope that answered any questions that may have arisen, but I'm sure I'll get the chance to answer any other questions that do pop up. Just from east to west, these are the locations that we've done some monitoring at during the last 3 years. We've got Sugarloaf Marina and the deeper marina waters in the urban core of the city of Port Colborne. We also have Lorraine Bay in the eastern side of the bay and the western side of the bay in the more rural areas of Port Colborne. In Fort Erie, we have Small Beach, which is at the Crystal Beach Waterfront Park and Boat Launch, which locals affectionately call Stinky Beach due to the algal washup that is present on those shorelines. We've also got the relatively unknown Windmill Point Beach and the public road allowances at Waverly Beach, which are called Windows to the Lake by the town of Fort Erie. Water quality is generally pretty variable across the shoreline here in Niagara. There's a couple factors that do generally worsen water quality across Canada. Typically, because Canada does have what are called combined sewers in more urban areas, when there is rainfall, it's pretty typical that bacteria levels will elevate in nearby water bodies for at least 24 to 48 hours after it rains. However, it's not really the case in Lake Erie in Niagara because none of the CSOs that we have, combined sewer overflows that we have, actually flow directly into Lake Erie. Generally, all of the CSOs in Niagara flow towards Lake Ontario. That said, there are some conditions that do worsen the water quality on a fairly regular basis. If we have heavy storm events, if we have winds coming in from the southwest that are sustained at high speeds for a prolonged period of time, that generally does kick up a lot of the sediment, and we do notice that the water quality does worsen over time during those events. All of these sites are available on the Swim Guide for you to check out and freely available. We've got data going back to 2019. Generally, water quality is pretty good, but there can be some issues. And so since 2019, when we first partnered with Swim Drink Fish, we have monitored at those 8 locations across the Lake Erie shoreline in Niagara. In so doing, we've engaged with over 275 volunteers in taking over 1,000 water quality samples. What's most important, though, is that we've shared this data with 15,000 people on the Swim Guide. So these are 15,000 individuals who went onto Swim Guide looking specifically at the sites that we monitored because they wanted to know what the water quality was like before they made the decision to interact with the Great Lakes. Next up, I'd love to introduce you to VAST, or the Visual Assessment Survey Tool, which is one of our newest initiatives that engages local coastal communities in monitoring their changing shorelines for things like algae washup, shoreline erosion, and aesthetic beach quality. This project is led by the Niagara Coastal Community Collaborative, but it is delivered in partnership with the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, Niagara College, and the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, thanks to generous funding from the Great Lakes Local Action Fund. This project was designed to help address some of the coastal data gaps that we've seen over the last number of years. So the importance of coastal monitoring is well known. However, coastal managers often lack the capacity to visit all of the sites that they manage at regular intervals so that they can see in near real time the changes that are occurring to those shorelines. So by leveraging citizen scientists, we can more frequently monitor a lot of different sites across a single stretch of shoreline. And so alongside surveys, anyone who participates takes regular photos of the shoreline so that we can actually see the impacts and the changes that are happening on the coast. We back all of this up with regular aerial drone surveys, and all of this data is combined to create the Great Lakes Coastal Monitoring Network. It's fairly easy to contribute. Participating community scientists, citizen scientists, volunteers are all encouraged to just go visit their favorite shoreline. While they're there, they're encouraged to take some photos with their smartphone, answer a survey about what they're seeing, and submit that data to us through our platform. The data is then uploaded to the VAST Explore mapping service, and this creates the ever-expanding near real-time Great Lakes Coastal Monitoring Network. And so this is what that ends up looking like. Users can visit this platform to see how their shoreline is doing, and coastal managers like the NPCA, like Environment Canada, or anyone who can make decisions around the shore can access this data to help substantiate with evidence some of the shifting trends of the shorelines that are under their authority. This allows them to more proactively manage them for the community as community resources. Currently, users can monitor the shoreline for nuisance algae, shoreline erosion, and aesthetic beach quality, but we're constantly adding, adapting, and evolving new surveys all the time. The first survey module that we developed for VAST actually monitors nuisance Clidoptera algae washout. This module is an evolution of the Clidoptera monitoring protocol that we developed with Environment and Climate Change Canada in 2017. And through 2018 to 2020, we had been using that protocol to monitor shorelines across Lake Erie. Clidoptera algae has been an ongoing issue for the Great Lakes, particularly in the eastern basin of Lake Erie, particularly in Niagara. And it's a priority issue that's currently flagged in the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement between Canada and the United States. Although it's not toxic like harmful algae blooms, Clidoptera algae is considered a nuisance that does pose threats to human and wildlife health because it can breed some harmful bacteria. When it washes on shore and it forms dense rotting mats in places, it can encourage the growth of harmful bacteria like E. coli and can, in cases, even lead to botulism outbreaks that end up affecting avian populations. Beyond the health risks, though, algae is unsightly, and there is a significant odor, making beaches undesirable for any visitors wanting to swim or use the shore for recreation. In Niagara specifically, the presence of Clidoptera rotting on the shorelines is often a factor in beach postings, which is something that not a whole lot of people are aware of. Increases in nutrient loading into the lakes and the presence of invasive zebra and quagga mussels has escalated the issue. Using the Clidoptera algae, volunteers collect information, the survey. Volunteers collect information about the amounts of algae present at the site over time, as well as other site conditions like recent weather conditions, the presence of invasive zebra and quagga mussels, litter, and just other conditions are captured as well. Erosion is also another significant coastal stressor that we're tracking with the VAST platform. It is well recognized as a concern for coastal ecosystem health, and although Environment and Climate Change Canada have recently made strides to quantify these impacts in their reports on the cumulative assessment of nearshore waters, to date, no formal agreements and targets have been set regarding erosion on the Great Lakes. Severe storm events and record high water levels, particularly over the last 3 years, have contributed heavily to erosion on the Great Lakes. With dunes eroding, much of the natural protection against storm activity is lost, and so to provide some protection, much of the lower Great Lakes coastlines have been hardened with stone armoring. Although it provides some short-term protection, these engineered installations often inadvertently disrupt natural longshore sediment transport processes, which can actually accelerate erosion in another location. So with a better understanding of the locations along the shoreline that are eroding, actions can be taken to proactively stabilize the shoreline through nature-based solutions that provide protection for the property, as well as provide habitat for critical species. And so with the erosion survey module, citizen scientists provide estimates for the size of the erosive area and other observations like the presence of exposed roots, cliffs, and vegetation collapse. Repeat images from the same location can provide an indication of the rate of erosion in certain areas, and that can help us in setting priorities, particularly for areas that we might want to protect first. The Aesthetic Beach Quality Survey is actually our newest survey module, and it's based on the guidelines for Canadian recreational water quality. Information from these surveys can provide an assessment of existing and potential water quality hazards and the associated public health risk. The information collected can aid in completing an environmental health and safety survey, which is called an EHS, or also known as an EHSS, by providing baseline information about what the site is like. EHSS are the blueprint for designing and implementing an effective risk management plan for recreational waters and shorelines. Additionally, the value or the data from these surveys can be used to inform areas that are in need of a litter cleanup or other community actions that can be undertaken. This is the most accessible survey that we have, and it's the most easily used by people that are unfamiliar with coastal ecosystems. Citizen scientists provide subjective ratings for the quality of the beach using a 5-star system. They provide information about wildlife during their surveys, and they add, what species they see if they know what the species are. They give us some indication about the amount of litter that is present, the kind of litter that is present, and like I said, this can help us in aiding prioritizing areas for shoreline cleanups. And some baseline water aesthetics are collected every survey as well. Things like water clarity, color, and odor, as well as recent wave and weather activity. So beyond our wildest dreams for this program, citizen scientists are actively tracking shoreline changes across 3 of the Great Lakes, across 70 distinct sites in the first year. Our outreach efforts never targeted these communities, and the program spread solely through word of mouth, which I think helps to indicate and substantiate some of the depth of the community appetite in monitoring the changing shorelines of the Great Lakes. This is something that everyone's concerned about, and so it's catching on. And so while we do have many areas outside of Niagara that are, coming online and submitting surveys, the bulk of our submissions are coming from within the Niagara region, which is something that we did expect. Particularly relevant to the conversation here are the sites on Lake Erie. The sites on Lake Erie had the highest degree of community participation, and so we've collected the most and highest quality data in this stretch of shoreline. So I've included here just an example of the value that repeat surveys at a single area can bring. So this example is Reeves Bay, where we had citizen scientists contributing numerous surveys from July to November. And so as we cycle through the images, you can see the frankly staggering changes that a shoreline undergoes throughout the season. And so this data is extremely valuable to coastal managers like the NPCA and Environment Canada in setting targets so that management decisions can be made in a more proactive way than ever before. All right, and as an added treat, I've included a secondary study that we've been conducting where we've tried to correlate what we're seeing from citizen science surveys with aerial drone surveys. And so on your screen, you can see the difference between 1 week in the amount of clitopher algae that washes up on the shoreline and in the near shore. This example is also from Reeves Bay, and it's the same location where the other photos were taken on the previous slide. All right, and so I've also included a bit of a Valentine's Day present for everyone here. We've got a video that we produced with the NPCA, and it's never before been shown to a public audience. And we're actually intending to use it to launch our 2022 VAST season in a few months. But I felt like I could probably show it here today and just give you a little sneak peek about, what it looks like and what we're going to hope to do next year. The Great Lakes are an incredible natural resource to the people of Niagara. We have Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, the Niagara River, and hundreds of kilometers of shoreline. The Visual Assessment Survey Tool, or VAST, is a citizen science initiative designed to engage coastal citizens, residents, beachgoers, and everyone in between in becoming active stewards of their shoreline. They're the people that are on the lake. They know what's happening, they know how it's changing, and they're the experts, and they can tell us what they're seeing. The Great Lakes are experiencing an unprecedented rate of change because of climate change, leading to shoreline erosion, nuisance algae blooms, and just a loss of habitat and species that are key to life in the Niagara region, a region so unique it's not found anywhere else in Canada. VAST is a result of the partnership formed between Niagara Coastal, Niagara College, and the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority.
The Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority is happy to partner with the Niagara Coastal Community Collaborative to implement the VAST program along our shorelines. With our natural hazard management to protect life and property, the data that this system collects will help us manage these shorelines towards resiliency. In Niagara, we are fortunate to have two shorelines on the Great Lakes. These are treasured natural resources that are going under dramatic changes. The VAST program will help us monitor this in an effective, community-driven way.
VAST is a framework that's designed to engage coastal residents, visitors, beachgoers, and youth in contributing to an ever-expanding coastal monitoring network that can inform the public of how and where to interact with the Great Lakes. And on the back end, it can create a real-time coastal decision support tool that coastal managers like the NPCA, Environment Canada, and the people who need the data can use to address these burgeoning issues, to restore the shoreline, to preserve the shoreline, to do what we can for the habitats and species and people that call these Great Lakes home. The benefit of the VAST program is that it engages the people who are walking the beach, the people who know it better than we do, and the people who are seeing their favorite shorelines change and degrade due to climate change. It's extremely easy to get involved with VAST. All you need is a phone and a desire to walk on the beach. All we need is you to submit a couple of surveys, a couple of photos, and you've contributed to citizen science, and you've helped us address these issues. All right, and so you may have recognized a few faces in there. Our staff had a great day getting to play actors for a day during one of the hottest days of the year this year. So it was a great time. But since we've launched this initiative in the early summer of 2021, we've trained 50 scientists here in Niagara who have donated 521 hours of their time, 531 hours. Over 400 surveys and sharing over 1,900 posts. Importantly, this data has also been shared with 1,500 users of the VAST platform, including coastal managers like the NPCA and Environment Canada. And finally, we'll move into our final initiative, which is also our newest initiative, Nature-Based Shoreline Solutions. This is what we would define in our collaborative stewardship action model or cycle as local action. These are actions being undertaken in the region that address some of the impacts to the shoreline. Using our data collected from our community-based monitoring initiatives, we're not only able to minimize the data gaps that exist, we're also able to prioritize and inform restoration efforts across the shoreline. And so as a result of the VAST program, we did notice that there were a number of shorelines that are experiencing very quick rates of erosion. As such, we began implementing restoration projects across the shoreline in support of nature-based solutions and natural shorelines to help mitigate the ongoing erosion and high water levels that we've been experiencing under a changing climate, particularly in Niagara and particularly over the last 3 years. And just like with the VAST program, this work is delivered in partnership with Niagara College and the NPCA. And so here we can see a photo that was taken during a VAST survey of Nickel Beach in the city of Port Colborne in late September 2021. Oh, actually, that's November 19 or 9, 2021. Sorry, I changed the image. And if I press a button, we'll see the exact same spot in mid-December after those intense windstorms that we had. And so you can see that the shoreline has effectively been flattened. And what was once a beautiful mature dune with some natural erosion has eroded into what you can see is now basically a sheer cliff face. You can see the sediment lines, which is not great. And so what we're trying to do with this initiative is to restore the shorelines back to some semblance of their natural state to help increase shoreline resiliency. To do this, we've adopted a few different approaches to try and restore the shoreline. We've recently launched and piloted a seed project where we transplanted local genetic stocks of the Great Lakes Champlain variety beach grass in key areas throughout the shoreline with help from Albert Garofalo, who I know most of you are familiar with. We've also partnered with the NPCA to install sand fencing, which is effectively just snow fencing, where appropriate to encourage sand deposition and discourage foot traffic in sensitive planting areas. We've seen some incredible success with regards to some of the projects, but while other projects, some of them implemented in November 2021, did fail during the December storms. However, some projects that had a little bit more time to be more established protected their shoreline fairly well, actually extremely well, during the storms that we saw in December 2021. The best example of this can be seen actually at Bay Beach in Fort Erie, where there was a dune, that dune was destroyed. We eventually restored a new dune in March of 2021, and it grew approximately 50% in size from the sand that was deposited during the December storms. And so here you'll just see a couple of examples of some of our social media materials covering off some of the restoration work that we've done. Keep in mind, this isn't as professional as some of the other videos, but it did do its job in galvanizing some of the community members and coming out, donating their time, and doing some awesome work on the shoreline.
The rain, it ain't permanent, and soon we'll be dancing in the sun. We'll be dancing in the sun. I'ma sing your song together. I'ma sing your song together. I feel good. Is that so wrong? I feel good. All night long, I feel good. One more song. Whoa, I feel good, so good.
Alrighty. So those were just instrumental, and they did a phenomenal job at getting some of our wonderfully dedicated volunteers and staff out to site to put in these projects, and you'll see a bunch of them up on screen here. We got started in restoring these ecosystems, and we're really excited to be able to continue this project into 2022 and into 2023. That said, we did launch this program in just November 2021, and from November to December, during a dormant stage for the American beachgrass plants, we planted them at 7 sites across the shoreline to restore dune function and habitat. American beach grass and the Great Lakes Champlain variety of American beach grass. As it grows, the roots spread out and effectively knit together the sand, which stabilizes the shoreline. The exposed grass on top also traps windblown sand, which helps to stabilize and add new sand and continue to grow that dune system. Recent studies have actually suggested that mature dunes are estimated to provide a value of approximately $3,000 per linear meter in shoreline protection. And so in just 1 month of plantings, we were able to transplant over 1,500 beachgrass plugs across 2,500 square meters of shoreline. And so conveniently, the grass and dunes also provide habitat for the rare Fowler's toad, which is only found here in Canada. Yeah. So these 3 phases and our 4 initiatives bring us through our collaborative stewardship action cycle, where we have done a few things. First, we've collaborated together to identify ecological priorities, set goals and objectives, and apply the collective impact model in a local action way. We've done this by leveraging community and citizen scientists and volunteers in the area to address these data gaps that we identified in our ecological priorities, those science questions, those science plans. And then finally, we use that data that our citizen scientists collected to engage the local community in implementing local specific actions that we could do together to address some of the biggest challenges that Lake Erie shoreline in Niagara is facing. But what happens next? What does 2022 look like if we've gone through the cycle? At this point, it starts to begin again, which is really exciting. It restarts on a rolling basis. So our community-based monitoring activities, they continue. The VAST program continues. The Swim, Drink, Fish, the monitoring hub, that stuff continues, as well as our local actions. They get to continue as well. Things like our shoreline restoration, and we get to just build on that through new iterations. So the results from both SEP 2 and SEP 3 of our collaborative stewardship action cycle are fed back into the knowledge brokering, which allows us to have new conversations and learn from each other, learn from different geographies, and share some of the lessons that we've learned to new areas, which can include expanding our actions to new areas, expanding our community monitoring initiatives to deal with new ecological priorities, and refining our initiatives over time to collect better quality data that can more holistically answer some of our science questions. And so for us in 2022 and onwards, this means that we expand our programs. We're actively looking at expanding our programs to Lake Ontario in Niagara, as well as throughout some of the more privatized shorelines on Lake Erie to see if we can make some inroads there. And we're currently sharing lessons that we've learned on our collaborative process with other areas and other municipalities and regions throughout the Great Lakes. For example, we're doing some workshops with folks in Haldimand and Norfolk counties, just to the west of us on Lake Erie, to maybe launch something like this one for themselves. And I could go on about this all night, but given that it's Valentine's Day, I wouldn't want to keep you from your loved ones, even if we're all here because, you know, we love nature and nature's our Valentine's. But I will stop here. I hope this served as a good introduction to the Niagara Coastal Community Collaborative, our initiatives, how we apply our stewardship action cycle, and how we use citizen science to address data gaps for the Great Lakes. There's a number of links to the resources that were shared on this, including the videos, and you can feel free to ask me any questions now as well. And just one final video to say thanks for sticking with me till the end of this presentation and to show off some of the gorgeous Lake Erie shoreline that we have and for our team to say goodbye on screen. You may recognize this, but it's Morgan's Point in Wainfleet. And we've been leveraging drone technology all summer long, and it really just gives us a very unique bird's eye view on what is a truly beautiful shoreline. And that's where I'll leave it today. Thanks, everybody.